Welcome, my friends, to the Guided Dog channel. On this episode, we're going to talk about a very powerful concept that in our society today we tend to overlook, which is how we perceive dog training. And I feel like we look at dog training all wrong. We set ourselves up for not only failure in our ability to affect change with our dogs, but also in the way that we look at dog training. It sets us up to have certain expectations and certain views that aren't necessarily healthy for the relationships that we're trying to have with our pets. So when you Google the words dog training, you typically come back with something that also includes dog obedience. So sometimes when we refer to dog training, we will say we're using dog obedience courses, or we are taking our dog to dog obedience classes. We are trying to instill obedience in our dogs. And it's a common word that we use, but many times, like most words in the language, we tend not to think about what the deeper implications are of the words that we're using, the definitions of these words, and then what they are psychologically setting us up to expect. So the dictionary definition of obedience, or to obey, is to be in compliance with an order, a request, or law, or submission to another's authority. And even humans who supposedly have higher thinking capability than animals have a hard time with the whole obedience concept. So you can imagine that if you try to apply obedience to an animal who does not think on such critical levels and has just as much free will as the average human, if not more, then you begin to see just how difficult it is to actually train an animal, and much less to think that you are going to get that animal to obey you and obey you consistently. But even that aside, it's this idea that we insist on imposing our wants and needs and our will on another living creature is not only narcissistic, but dictatorial. And I would argue that it's really not the best way to go about creating any kind of relationship, especially the kind of bond that you would want with your pets. Now, I'm not at all saying that dog training is bad. In fact, just the opposite. I believe that dog training can be a very good thing, and in fact, it can help you to build a bond with your animal when you work together with them towards common goals. What I am saying is that by looking at training as obedience, we are setting ourselves up with the wrong idea that we are forcing our will upon another living being for compliance, whether or not that's within that other living being's best interest. And sometimes you will find that what is within the dog's best interest and what is within your best interest do not match. They're at odds with one another, and in those situations, it's the most compassionate thing to do to find another solution where both you and the dog can be happy, even if that isn't together in the same situation. Especially when we expect compliance out of a dog for certain behaviors that just completely go against what that dog is hardwired to be. For example, as a trainer, I saw this all the time, where you would have a breed that was prone to, let's just say, running after and biting things that are moving. So for herding dogs, that's how they are hardwired to behave, where they go after things that are moving quickly and they nip at their heels. And this is not an ideal pet for maybe a family that has children. But I would see it all the time in training that a family would come in and they would try to force that dog to stop doing a behavior that was hardwired within their breed characteristics to do. And what these families didn't seem to realize is that they were up against a problem that training was never going to fix, especially permanently, in the first place. Which brings me to my next point, that training is not meant to permanently make problems go away. Training is only there to give you skills to help manage behaviors and communicate with your dog. Many people will spend a ton of money trying to mold a dog to fit into their situation, and they're setting themselves up for failure because that dog didn't have the proper characteristics or the proper breed profile to fit their family to begin with. And if we're going to make responsible decisions and be good dog guardians, we have to first consider what is going to be reasonable to ask of that dog in training versus just asking for complete compliance and obedience. So, in short, calling dog training obedience is setting us up for failure and setting us up to think about dog training in a way that isn't realistic. And instead, we should be looking at dog training as a way to coexist peacefully and healthfully with our canine companion in a relationship that complements each other. So, thank you for watching, and paw must stay.